When you do a drawing, first thing you got to mark off, and remember, you do it mentally most of the time, but what I'm doing is just showing you, when you have a picture framed, they put a mount around it or whatever, take your picture to just beyond that and allow for that bit left over to be painted over, but to be masked by the mount when it's framed. So you don't get bits of white, your picture goes right to the edge. So when you have it framed, you get a picture that sits in the frame properly. You don't have a picture framer that hates you for producing a cockeyed, strange looking picture that he can't frame properly. You can see this, they take your picture up beyond that line, but allow that extra bit all the way around that's going to be covered by the mount when you have it framed. Thinking ahead and applying this should actually help with the final presentation of your piece of artwork, which is very important. Here's another simple little trick whilst you're drawing. When you draw, you'll collect graphite on the side of your hand where it's in contact with the paper. So to prevent this, have a spare piece of A4 paper which you put under your hand, which will stop the hand picking up graphite from the drawing you're working on. As you can see, you're rubbing up and down it. I'm a shocker for it. I very rarely use a piece of paper like that. I end up with graphite all over the place. But also, a piece of paper is very handy for smoothing down the end of your pencil when you've sharpened it. It tends to be very sharp and pointed, and with this you can just round it off nicely, so when you apply it onto the drawing it's got a nice soft edge. When composing your picture on a sheet, mentally divide the picture into thirds. Take a line down 1/3, so you've got 1/3 and then 2/3, and do the same across t'other way, so you've got 2 lines. This is the golden rule, which is mathematically worked out and you can get very bogged down with, but basically it's dividing the picture up into segments of 2/3 to 1/3. So instead of slapping a house or a subject you're painting bang in the middle, or a tree as I'm drawing, you put it on that third line, or your horizon goes onto that top third. Using this principle will basically enhance the visual aspect of your picture. In fact, you'll find a lot of people when they take photographs do it subconsciously. You tend to position your photograph according to the golden rule. It's something inbuilt in us. As you can see, it's not so pleasing with a subject slap bang in the middle of the picture. Some people do it and get away with it, but just as a basic rule of thumb, stick to the 2/3 to 1/3. It does make a difference. I stress this is mainly when you're drawing landscapes and scenes. If you're doing a portrait, that's a different story. But that's the golden rule. Next, everyone's pet nightmare and fear in drawing. It's perspective, and it's very simple really. Right, start out with your sheet of paper and draw a line across it like so. That is your horizon line. Put a mark on it, a cross, and that cross is called the vanishing point. Let me show you. I'll put another one there because I'm explaining something different. Take your vanishing point and connect it to 2 lines coming forward and put cross lines on. Railway line with sleepers. And there you go. Graduate as it goes away to the distance. And there you have a railway line disappearing into the horizon. Vertical beside it, all connected up. Series of poles, cross members going smaller all the way. There you go, telegraph poles running down beside the railway line. Now, this is what you don't do. You start a second vanishing point. Now this fence should go to the vanishing point. Can you see it looks wrong? Two vertical lines cross members, even if you graduate them and get narrower, it's still not a railway line, it's a ladder. Okay? Always work to your vanishing point. Little line in the distance there, you've got hills, and the railway line disappears to the mountains in the far distance. Very simple. Now, avenue of trees. You've got a tree. Connect the top and bottom to the vanishing point, not above the vanishing point as I did there, and bring the smaller trees back and get larger as you go along, and you end up with your avenue of trees. So there it is. Next, a fresh sheet of paper, your horizon line, vanishing point, and from that put a starburst of lines to the edges of the paper, like this. Lots of them. They're your guidelines. What you're going to do is you're going to draw a street. So there you have it. The wide bit in the center is the street, and the two sides are where the buildings are going. Then you take the vertical lines of your houses and literally start constructing your house. There it is, the first one with the roof. You haven't got enough lines, so get the ruler back on and draw some more. You'll eventually be able to draw houses like this without the construction lines. You'll be able to visualize the lines in your mind's eye. It's just a matter of practice. Start drawing your windows in. There we go, vertical lines, then the horizontals go to your construction lines to the vanishing point, and you plot in your windows. You need extra lines, get the ruler back, draw some extra lines to your vanishing point, and there's your windows. Horizontals to the vanishing point, verticals vertical, crossbars in the windows. Start a bit of a chimney, but leave the rest. We'll come back to that later. There's a reason for that. Remember that. Okay, go to the other side of the street. Go and start drawing over the other side there. Vertical lines on your vanishing point lines, you put the roof, etc. Construct the house. There we go. The next one next to it, you have a gable end. So you put a triangle up on top, projecting slightly. Take your lines back horizontally there, and there you have your two houses. One's got a gable end. Lines down, horizontal out, you construct a pavement. Next house, slightly taller than the one before. So you go up onto the next line, back on your roof, and there's the house. A third one, this time curved verticals to give it a medieval feel. Now, if you want these houses to look as though they project beyond each other, take an extra vanishing point line down there and bring the vertical of the house down to that line. Connect it up and take a line back horizontally, and you can see when I shade in, there's the projection of that house in front of the one in front. There you go, and that one sticks out in front. So you get a degree of variation in your building line along the street. Very simple. All to the vanishing point. Okay, so we take a fresh sheet, horizon, vanishing point, and your starburst of lines from the vanishing point, and start constructing your house as we did before. There we are, the verticals, windows. Keep your verticals vertical, your horizontals to your line to the vanishing point. You have the facade of the house with its windows and the roof. There's your roof. Now, you've got the side of the house facing us. Extend your horizon line off to the right, way off picture, right over to the right. Now you imagine a second vanishing point right down there. So I brought it forward for sake of illustration, so this is very acute. It wouldn't be nearly as acute as this. And those lines from this side extend back to that vanishing point. Very simple. You just visualize where that vanishing point is, or you put on a long table and put a mark further on the table with a ruler where you can see where it goes. Can you see it? You extend those lines back. And this gives you the lines for this end of the house. Connect those up, and you can see the house immediately becomes three-dimensional. All those lines extend back starburst exactly the same way as the one from the original vanishing point. So that the windows, etc., the verticals are vertical, and then the horizontals go back to that second vanishing point. And the same would apply on the other side of the street. You have a second vanishing point going the other way. So your houses have a three-dimensional quality at the end of the street. Okay, so then you draw another house behind it to the original vanishing point, and then lines coming down, and you can see there goes your other lines, the verticals, the horizontals come down, so this house towers above the other, but it looks correct in relation to it. One in front, vertical lines. There's your roof. There's the front of the house. And there you have your house beyond. A house behind them. Use the same vanishing point. And block it up. And there you go. There's a tower block behind. Back to the chimney. You can see you draw the front side to the front lines and the facing side to the far vanishing point lines to get your three-dimensional chimney sitting on top of the building. Now come back to the windows. If you draw the windows with horizontal lines at the top and bottom, it doesn't look right. But at the same time, that horizontal line there forms, with the vertical, a projecting sign sticking out front of the building, like a pub sign or whatever. So you can see you construct, then go back to the other side of the street. In go your construction lines. Make them more acute this time, so you narrow the street down and make the side taller buildings closer to you. You're standing on this pavement looking across the street at the other end. In go your windows, etc. All the way down to get your second side of the street. Line down the middle, little rectangles which diminish in size to dots at the end, and you've a white line down the middle. Very simple. Just practice. Next, holding your pencil. Don't hold it like you're writing with it. Hold it loosely. Relax your grip. Nice and floppy. With long, easy strokes you draw. To do more detail, you hold it slightly further down. And vary the pressure. A faint circle, slightly more pressure to give the details. There you are, a little face. Instantly. Hills in the distance. Tree line, just sketched in. Holding the pencil loosely, you'll very quickly cease to be conscious of the pencil in your hand. You have an interaction between you and the paper, and your pencil will go where you want it to go. You want to draw a little man. A couple of faint circles, loosely held pencil, tighter in, bring in the detail of the face, the nose, the stomach down to his trousers, his arm, put an eye in, and there you have, little man. Right, change pencil. Let's have my mechanical pencil back, which I find it more comfortable. You've got the two grips, front end grip for detail, further back grip for loose sketching. Okay, so let's start drawing a little landscape. Start off with the distant hills sketched in. Bit of hedgerow, trees on the edge. You're going to frame it, make a vignette of a little picture, or very, very faintly drawn. And go back over it, start bringing up your lines a bit, keep it nice and faint and very light. There's a tree line in the distance and a hedge. Bringing it down, connecting to other fields. Bit of vertical shading, just to define your trees. There we go. Now, your foreground trees can be a bit more detailed, so you start drawing those in. Leaves. Don't scrub with your pencil, always draw. Little lines, shading. Now the sunshine and the light on this picture is coming up from the top right there and shining down. You always got to be conscious where the light is. If you put your shadows in, shadows are most important to give it your three-dimensional effect. So those trees you've drawn in, a bit of hatching on there, and on the hills, which gives you your feeling of a solid landscape. There we go. In the foreground tree, a few branches worked in there, a bit of shading, cross-hatching. Lines going one way, lines going the other. Don't scrub it. They each individual lines you're drawing along the foreground, and the shadow under the tree comes out. So you start creating your shadows as you draw. There we go. Right to the foreground, the root of a tree, some grass is coming off. And the more detailed leaves and more cross-hatching, and bring that a bit firmer with your pencil so you emphasize it more. So you bring your foreground in. There's your leaves and your branches overhanging at the top of the picture. And cross-hatching shading on there as well. And build up the layers of graphite on that to darken it, so it starts giving you the feeling of being through a window. Look, when you cross-hatch, series of lines one way, series of lines the other. That's what they call hatching. Going the other way is cross-hatching. It's much nicer than just scrubbing away with a pencil. You get a rhythmic, beautiful feel to your drawings. Scrub away the picture, it looks a mess. Here we go. Build up your tree in the distance there, the shadow underneath it. And some grass in the foreground. Flowers. Some branches to frame your distant hills. Shade in the branch with some cross-hatching to silhouette it against the light sky. Then you can go back and work other parts of the picture in to bring them up in relation to the front. Okay, so you want some trees in the middle distance, or a hedge, and bring it to connect to the front. Put your line work of your hatching so that where the shadow is at the back of it, away from the sunlight. Can you see there? So you've got the light on the front. And there's your field across the middle. In the foreground, and a bit of grass tussocks here and there. You want a bit more of a, something of a point of interest there, so you run a post and rail fence across. Once again, the sun shining beyond it, so it's silhouetted. More distant trees. Bring a hedgerow down towards the fence on the left-hand side. And use some heavier pencil strokes to emphasize some darker shading. There you have a little landscape. Another little sketch. Take a horizontal line, going to draw some water. Bring the banks down and a couple of arches, which will be a bridge. Off to one side. And the hump of the bridge. And your water's going to be in front. Just sketch in lightly. Trees down to the side. Then you draw in the riverbank. We are coming down towards us. Now remember, when you do water, that you work with a series of vertical lines and horizontal. It must be level. And reflection in water is exactly the same as a mirror. It reflects exactly what's on the land above it. Do your bulrushes in the front there and some grass along the line. Shrubs going down towards a bridge underneath. Then you take some horizontal lines and some zigzag to represent the current in the water. So it starts taking shape as water. Then extend your reflection down into the water. The grass is overhanging. Reasonably accurate, the reflection of the grasses in the water. Back to the bridge. And the river going through the archways to the bank on the far side, the other side of the bridge. Define your bridge with some hatching. And then the archways are reflected in the water. Once again, mirror image. Give your bridge a three-dimensional quality by running in the underneath the arch and shading that in a bit darker. And its reflection in the water down to the piers. Let's centralize that to work on the far bank of the bridge. Here we are. There's a reflection in the water, the ripples of the water and the current coming away, and the bank on the far side of the bridge. Vary your shading. Use stronger lines to highlight what you want highlighted. The shadow on the bridge. The far bank, the reflection of the bank into the water. There'll be a dark line there where the water is. You have the trees far beyond will also reflect in that water. The horizontal lines and some squiggly lines showing you the verticals. Let's put a tree in on the bank there. Just define it across the front. Here we go. There's your tree reflected in the water. Thicken up the trunk and shade it in because it's silhouetted. Mirror those branches in the reflection so it looks plausible. The bank. Work over the picture all over and go back to parts so you emphasize and you build up the whole picture simultaneously. And your reflections, you've got the vertical lines, the horizontal. And your mirror images. Next, trees. People are very frightened of drawing trees and get them looking right. Start with the sun. Imagine where your sun is up above. Hot midday sun. Okay, so you're drawing a conifer. An African tree like an acacia, which is a flat top tree. Or a temperate tree, a lollipop type tree. So start by building up the shape of your tree with the trunk at the bottom. Put the skeleton and the branches in where they show. And start working the outline shape. Remember where the sun comes from. So you're putting your light exposed to the sun and shadow cast by the leaves above. Build up layers and leave spaces through the tree where the light shows through from the other side to give it its three-dimensional quality. Work your way down away from the sun At the back there you have shadow, and slowly you'll find your tree taking shape. Work in small amounts of suggestion of leaves. The side away from the sun is where the shadow goes. The trunk's down below, so it's going to be fairly dark. And build up your shadow. And then the angle where it comes down on the ground, put your shadow in on the ground, which is the shadow the tree casts onto the ground, the shade. So there you have your temperate type oak or a beech tree. Keep up your cross hatching until you get the shape as you want it. Suggestions of leaves. Next, a flat top tree. That quite literally like a pancake. The top end gets the light, the bottom end doesn't. Underneath you have the spreading branches, and below that you'll have your patch of shade. Just visualize where your sun is. Suggestion of leaves, and then your shadow. And there's your acacia. Next is your conifer. Draw in the shape of the pine needles, and the side of the conifer away from the light. Put your shadow in. Your suggestion of leaves, the trunk. And the shadow of that will run back towards us like a spearhead. There you have your three basic tree shapes. Now you notice as I'm drawing, can you see the side of my hand covered in graphite? If I wasn't so sloppy, I would use a protective piece as I showed you earlier, which would actually protect the drawing from me smudging it with graphite. And you'll often see you get a drawing that's been well worked and worked over for a long time. You get a grey tinge to the whole drawing, which is graphite deposited from the side of your hand. Another favourite subject people like to draw is birds. Now, here's a bird. When you next get the roast chicken out, ready for the oven, study it. Here we are. You've got the roast chicken lying on his back there, doing an impression of a very dead chicken. You can see you've got the breasts, the legs with the big thighs, and that is the shape of all birds, from an ostrich to a hummingbird, underneath those feathers. So you're going to draw a bird, start off with an oval, roughly the shape of that chicken, so keep the chicken in mind. Remember the roast chicken. So there you have it, an oval, a circle on top, which is his head with his beak. His wing fits on the side there and goes down. You've got the feathers on his wing and his beak. Round to his breast and down. To his parson's nose down the bottom there, and his tail sticks off the end of the parson's nose. Put the eye in, shade the eye. Just behind the eye you have the coverts that cover the ear. There's his beak. Nice bit of breast with some shading on. And his mantle at the back, he's slightly fluffed up. I've changed the bottom of the side. He's going to be sitting on a branch, so you bring him down nice and fluffy. There you are, his feet on the branch. You have a little bird. Make sure the feet are in the right position, that he sits vertically. And look inside. You see where his legs are there? Inside there, you have your roast chicken. So you want to draw birds, study the roast chicken. I got some very, very bizarre looks when I was younger, and I was used to spend a lot of time studying the chicken before it went into the oven. Next we have characters of birds. It's all in the beak. Long beak, like an avocet or a wader of some sort, oyster catcher. And you've got the hook beak. Going back. An eagle. Fierce predatory eye. Come on the other side there. Another rounded beak, quite hooked, with a curved base. And you have a parrot. So take any one of these heads I've just drawn and stick that on top of your roast chicken and you have a bird. And depending on what sort of facial expression you give it, you either have a parrot or a stork or a little head like this with a pointed beak. With that basic shape of the roast chicken, and then study the different bird heads, and you can draw birds. It's quite simple. Fresh sheet. Start with an oval, and a second oval, connect them with a short neck. A couple of circuits where your legs are going. Extend the legs out a bit. Connect the head with the jawbone line. Make sure the jawbone articulates somewhere below the ears. Put a bit of a mane on, an eye, a mouth. Connect the neck back to the oval. Those little front legs. Put a couple of hooves on the ends. There you go. And the back legs. Bring them round. Little fat stomach. A tail. And you have a horse. A little dumpy cartoon horse. Nice eye. Very simple to draw. Next, let's draw a face. Start with an oval, almost an egg shape. A couple of bits at the bottom, which is the neck, and 2 lines across. Between those lines, draw a pair of ears on and bring the jaw down from the ears where it articulates round towards the chin. Around the top and a nice egg-shaped top of the head. Now, you had spectacles and we were designed to fit spectacles, you see. So you draw that straight line, you draw a pair of circles, connect them to the ears, put the eyes in, a bridge. You have the 3 points where your spectacles sit on your face, which gives you the position of your face. A bulbous end for your nose with the 2 side pieces and your eyes looking out through the spectacles. Remember, the eye is an orb covered by a piece of skin which has got a slit in it to open. So you've got the joint at the corner. It doesn't go in a circle. It goes down to the 2 sides. Then you have the, because it's moist, light reflecting on it, on your iris and your pupil. So there you go. Now he's looking slightly sideways, so put the eyes to one side. Shade them in. There you go. So there's your eyes. Then the eyebrows go on. Below the nose you have the mouth. Turn him into a chubby chap. Put some circular jowls on there. Bring his neck out because he's a heavy drinker. Then you want your hair on top. Remember, it goes on top of the head. It doesn't go on the head. So it wants to bulge out. And the light then comes up from the top side there. So you put the shadow on the opposite side and shade it in. And you construct a neck with a face on it. With your hairdo. Very simple way to do a face. But remember the specs. Egg shape with a pair of circles drawn on for the specs connected to the ears. That shows you where the ears are supposed to be, and the eyes look out through the specs. That gets your positioning right. Finally, let's do you a quick sketch of a man having a jog. Start with a stick man like a Lowry. Circle for his head, his body, then put an oval over the stick. Thicken up the legs. Put a foot at each end. The arms. And in his shape, a little pot belly there. Straight back going down to his bum. Then you've got his head on top. Hair on top of his head, so it projects beyond. Running man pointing this one, you see. There's his little arm sticking out the other side pointing. down to his trousers, with a shadow there. There you have a man trotting along, pointing.